Does it ever happen to you that you try to learn a new word, and whenever you learn the meaning of that word, gradually you forget the meaning of the word and you are not able to recall the meaning of the word at some time? So why does it happen? So we're going to talk about why people are learning the words in a wrong way, and we're going to talk about the best and effective way to remember a new word. So let's get started. Alright, let's talk about how people in general learn a new word. For example, if I have to learn a new word, what I try to do, find or understand the meaning of the word and try to mug up the meaning. So what I do, I'm trying to mugging up the meaning of the word, but I'm not using it in our daily conversation. So it means I'm not making a sentence, I'm not using it with a sentence, I just remember the meaning. So what happens when we don't use it anymore in a real life situation with a sentence, we tend to forget it with time. So this is a wrong approach to learn a word. So I'm going to tell you the best way or an effective way through which you can remember the word for a long time. So the best way is to find or understand the meaning, and then you have to write down the meaning. Also, try to relate that word with a real life situation and write down an example sentence of your own. And finally, you can note down everything. For example, if you have learned 10 words today, you have to write down in a notebook along with the meaning, the situation, and the sentence of your own. So whenever you can revise it, you can recall all the words, and whenever you recall the situation, you can automatically remember that word. Now I'm going to give you one example. For example, if I say a word polite. Now polite means someone who is kind. Now the general way to remember the word is to just mug up the meaning, just remember the meaning, and that's it, right? But gradually you're going to forget it because you are not using it in your real life situation. But if I say use polite or remember the word, the meaning, but also think of a situation where you can relate the word or you can fit the word properly and try to make a sentence of your own, note it down in a notebook, and then revise it again and again. So whenever you can recall the situation, you automatically gonna recall the word as well. Now let me give you some examples. Alright, so now let's do one exercise. So I'm gonna say a word and you have to guess the meaning. If you don't know the meaning, that's alright. So the word is procrastinate. Now, what I have to do, what my approach? My approach is to find out the meaning of the word. So procrastinate means to delay, right? To delay is to procrastinate. Now, how I'm gonna remember the meaning of this word? So think of a situation. So when do you delay something? So think of a situation. For example, if you go to the office and your boss gives you some unnecessary task and you don't like to do those kind of tasks and you always delay, you always procrastinate. Now, if you remember this situation, every time this kind of situation comes up in front of you, you're always going to recall that word quickly or immediately, right? So whenever you think of the boss, office, unnecessary task, you don't like something doing it, you're going to recall that word. Now, this is a situation I have thought of. Next step is to write down your own sentence. So for example, now I know the meaning of the word. Now I'm going to write the meaning along with my own sentence. So with that situation, right, relating to that situation. So for example, I'll say, whenever my boss gives me some unnecessary task to perform, I procrastinate, or I tend to procrastinate, right? This is the sentence I would say. Okay, now the final step is I will write down the meaning of the word. Make sure it should be in English. I mean, if you're writing down the meaning should be in English. In case if you're not able to remember the meaning of the word in English because you think it's really difficult for you to remember, you can write down in your native tongue as well, but try to avoid writing down in your native tongue. Try to write it in English only, right? So you write down the meaning and write down the situation. For me, for this word, the situation is my boss, right? I go to the office and my boss gives me some unnecessary task and I don't like to do that, and I always try to procrastinate. So this is my situation. and then I wrote down one example. So you have to make sure that you write down in a notebook or a memo anywhere, right? So in this way, whenever you think of this situation, you're always going to recall the word. Okay, let me give you another word. If I say another word is beguiling. Beguiling. Now, what is beguiling? So I try to find out the meaning of the word. So the meaning of the word is something which is charming or attractive. Okay, so that means beguiling. Now, think of a situation. So let me create a situation. I say, whenever my wife or say my girlfriend or a partner, right, whenever she puts on some makeup or whenever she wears a nice dress, she looks beguiling, right? So this is the situation for me. So what's the situation? Girlfriend or partner or wife or wearing a nice dress, or say putting on some nice makeup, right? So this is the situation for me. So whenever I'll try to recall this situation, these words will immediately pop up in my mind. So always try to remember the situation, because it's easy to remember situation rather than the meaning of the word. So if you remember the situation, you're going to recall that word immediately. Now I will try to create a new sentence, right? An example sentence of my own. So for example, whenever my wife wears a nice dress, she looks beguiling. Okay, this is my example sentence. So quickly, I have to write it down in a notebook. You have to write down the meaning, the situation, and the example sentence. So whenever you think of your wife, nice dress, nice makeup, you will recall this word beguiling. Okay, another word. Let me give you another word, which is, I would say, paunch. Right? Now, what is paunch? Well, let me try to find the meaning. So paunch means big belly or beer belly or big stomach, right? Someone who has got a big belly. That's called paunch. Okay, now let me think of a situation. For example, whenever I go out, I try to eat in a restaurant or some chain restaurants or some burger joints or pizza joints, right? So I try to eat some fast food. And whenever I eat fast food, my paunch becomes big. My paunch becomes big, or I become fat, right? So now this is the situation for me, right? So whenever I think of eating food, junk food, going to a restaurant, or eating pizza or burger, I will always remember the word paunch, right? So let me make a sentence of my own, right? An example sentence. So whenever I eat out in a restaurant, my paunch becomes large, right? So this is my example sentence. So now whenever you think of a situation, eating junk food, eating in a restaurant, eating pizza, burger, you will remember this word or recall this word paunch. So this is one of the best way to remember all the words. So what we have to do, try to remember the situation rather than the meaning of the word. So you should also try this method, and I think this method works really well for me at least. So as I told, all 3 steps. However, the final step, which is noting down all the words in a notebook and writing the meaning and the sentence, which is an optional one. If you think you are an advanced learner, you have sharp memory, you can skip the 3rd step. You can basically think of the meaning and think of a situation and the sentence in your mind only. You don't have to write it down, but I think writing is quite effective. If you write down something, you can easily remember that thing for a long time. All right, so you have to try this method. Okay, now let's review all the words we have learned today. So for example, first word was procrastinate. So quickly, I think of the situation. Situation was, I go to the office and my boss gives me unnecessary tasks. I don't like to do it and I procrastinate. Right? So this is the situation. So I remember the procrastinate means to delay. Example, whenever my boss gives me some unnecessary tasks, I tend to procrastinate. All right. The second word was beguiling. Think of the situation for beguiling my wife, my partner. Whenever my wife puts on some makeup or wears a nice dress, she looks attractive, means beguiling, right? So this is the sentence. But whenever my wife wears a nice dress, she looks beguiling. Okay. Third word was paunch. Okay. What was the situation? Paunch. I go out, eat in a restaurant, eat pizza, burger, and my stomach becomes big. So big stomach is paunch. So whenever I eat in a restaurant, my paunch becomes larger. So these are the three situations. So see how easily we can recall the meaning of the words by just remembering the situation, right? And it's easy to remember the situation. Anyway, this is the method and I think it's quite effective for me. If you have any other method which you think is more effective, then you can comment down below and tell me about your method and how you remember a new word. Alright, so that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Sayonara.